you.
Perfect. We're on.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Million Vegan Grandmothers, Climate Healers, and the grandmothers are interviewing today Captain Paul Watson. So thank you, Paul, so much for being here. It's such an honor always such an honor to be speaking with you and to be able to tap into your life. It's always moving and changing and dedicated to the beautiful sentient beings of the ocean. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
The grandmothers are starting a campaign as the calf and cow of the calf and cow of the dairy industry, as our defenders for the mothers and the offspring of all animals and the exploitation that's happening because of animal agriculture and because of the greed of our world. And we would like to invite you to be our representation for the calf and cow of the ocean. We're wondering if you would be willing to do that.
Oh, sure. No problem. Honored.
Okay. Well, we would be honored. Thank you. So I'd like to just start with a couple of questions, and then anyone that would like to ask a question, and if you're leaving in half an hour because you have other commitments, please jump in, raise your hand, and ask a question at any point, please. So on the sacred bonds and the interconnection, when we're talking about defending the mothers and babies of all species, Paul, the language of calf and cow, but we're asking for like an invitation to the comparison between the bovine mothers and the young, the ones at hand that we're using as our representation for the calf and cow, or the mother and offspring of all species. The whale mother and their offspring, on the other hand. And how does the whaling industry, like the dairy industry, exploit and sever the bonds between the whale cow and her calf? Could you just
traditionally they actually used to target the calves first, so that they knew that the mother would defend the calf, so then they would kill the mother. They don't do that now, but they did that for up until quite recently. But there is a very, very strong bond between the mother's whales and the calves. Right across the species, there's no difference when it comes to species. And that's also true, I think, of dolphins. So yeah, the bond is very, very strong, and it has been exploited.
Mm. So when did they stop, using the calf as a way to target the mother, the cow?
Well, I think it's because whaling has been so much diminished from, when we first began. I think that it's been 90% diminished since 75 when I started this. So, countries like the Soviet Union, South Africa, Chile, Peru, Australia, South Korea, Spain, none of these countries are whaling anymore. So it's really restricted to industrial operations by Japan and Norway. And Iceland hasn't killed any whales for the last 3 years. So that's been successful. So I haven't been able to monitor the Norwegian operations to see if they do that, but I haven't heard that they do that. But this used to be quite a common method by the Soviet and the Japanese whalers in the Southern Ocean for many years.
Oh. Do people know this?
Well, it's there historically. I mean, it's well documented. In fact, whalers actually used to, going back many years, actually used to, that was their instructions, hit the calf first and the mother will defend the calf, and then you get 2 for 1.
Wow. Wow. So can you speak to this?
It's interesting with the one species, the gray whale. Now, we look on the gray whale as being rather passive, gentle and everything. But the whalers, 100, 200 years ago, they called it the devilfish. And the reason being is that they were extremely protective of their young. And when they tried this technique of, attacking the calf first, the mother would turn quite aggressively on the whaling boats with her tail and cause considerable damage. A lot of whalers were actually killed by enraged gray whale mothers. So they historically they were the toughest ones they had to deal with.
And interesting, the name, the devil, the evil as opposed to the light.
Well, of course, anytime an animal kills a person, the animal's evil. I mean, that's just the way the point of view that's been represented. It's we always put the animals in a position where they're inferior to us in every respect. When in fact, I don't think that there's any real many animal groups in the world that are as lack the compassion and actually exercise the sadistic tendencies of human beings. There are some, but very few.
Mm. Yeah. I'm going to ask one more question, then I see Donna's hand is up. Can you speak a little bit about the grieving that you've seen from a mother whale grieving her calf?
I think the most noteworthy one was when an orca up in the Pacific Northwest, her calf died, and actually she carried that calf pretty much on her head, balancing on her head for weeks, actually. So that was certainly a very visible grieving process on that. And they don't abandon the calves if they're dead or anything, but they also if they're injured and everything, they simply don't abandon them. And in many cases, entire pods will come to rescue and to protect a struck whale, whether it be a calf or even an adult whale.
Oh, powerful, powerful. Donna.
Yeah, that is powerful. Um, I have to say that I have been admiring you for years. My son and I used to watch your program, and every week, we were so pleased that you were doing that work, and it inspired us. You had mentioned earlier that demonizing the animal is is common, and it becomes evil. And I'm wondering if I know that I don't know if it's the Alaskan or which community of Native Americans or Native indigenous people, whale hunting. Um, there's been a long-lasting negative effect of I think they were demonized. When there was a story about a young boy who had his first whale kill, and it just enraged many you know vegans, vegetarians, etc. And it has had a long lasting effect on that community. I was watching a little series, and somebody was meeting somebody new and says, "You're not a vegetarian, are you?" I mean, it's like they were just it was very, very divisive. And I'm wondering if you can think of how we can how we can approach that, uh, all communities that are doing what we consider to be evil, without considering the people themselves to be evil, and how we can. I don't know what my question is. I don't know if it's getting across that
What you're trying to say
how.
is what you're referring to is the Yupik people up on St. Lawrence Island, up in the
Thank
Berings.
you. Yeah.
And personally, I think it's an evil community. I've been there. I've seen them use AK-47s to kill walruses just to take their tusks.
Well,
So
I wonder if anybody is evil. I mean, when we what is the word, demonize anybody,
well, I don't think we're
we separate
demonizing, but
ourselves.
we're pointing it out that it's completely unacceptable to kill walruses with
Yes,
automatic rifles just to take.
yes, yes.
That is
What they're
completely.
doing is evil. What I wonder is if we can
Now, I was the
consider that
person.
they. Mhm.
Yeah, I was the person that people criticize for attacking that Yupik boy who harpooned a whale, and
Yeah,
I did attack him. I did it because not only he killed the whale, and then he boasted about it on social media
yeah,
about how
yeah.
wonderful this thing was. That is not part of the Yupik tradition. You don't kill a whale and then go. In fact, traditionally in their communities, you didn't boast about it at all. But here
Mhm.
you are boasting to the world, look what I did. I killed a 250-year-old whale, and look at me. I'm just proud to do it. I'm sorry, but I have no sympathy for that kind of that approach. No,
Right.
the
That.
UPIC did
Yeah.
not drive the whales to the brink of extinction, but they can put them over. And there's really
Mm,
no need. There's really no need for it. Now,
yeah.
I was in prison in Greenland with everybody in the prison was indigenous. Got along with them fine.
Mm,
Really, everybody was really friendly, and I thought that their attitude about they thought the Japanese whalers were exceptionally greedy, and they thought the Faroese pilot whale killers were exceptionally sadistic. And so what I saw there was a very quiet community where, yes, they would kill a beluga whale here, but they didn't kill any of the big whales. But they did it for food and everything. But they seemed to still hold the traditional respect for what they were doing. I didn't see that when I on St. Lawrence Island. I didn't see that respect. Um, so the problem is that indigenous communities around the world have been perverted by Western civilization,
mm,
uh, and they have the same values. You know, when I opposed the macaw whaling in Washington State, people called me a racist and everything, but it didn't bother me because what the macaw were doing was illegal. It was a violation of international Aboriginal laws under the International Whaling Commission. We were invited in to intervene by the elders of the Macaw Nation. And I even said at a press conference, if the elders want us to leave, we will leave. But you know, this was not traditional. They were going out to kill a gray whale with 50 caliber rifles. You know, that was hardly anything traditional about that at all. In fact, I would like I don't even think that there's anybody alive today who can go out and kill a whale in a traditional manner, you know, with a
mm.
handheld harpoon and a skin harpoon. But it just isn't possible. You know, in the Faroe Islands, they say that killing the pilot whales is tradition. They go out with outboard motors and steel boats and wetsuits and two-way radios. There's nothing traditional about this at all. The only thing that's traditional about it is the killing. And
Mm.
uh, and the Faroe Islands, you know, they enjoy the highest per capita income of anybody on the planet. It's got one of the highest uh, standards of living of anywhere on the planet. They're not wanting for anything. They don't have to kill whales. But you know, they say, well, you know, God gave us the whale to kill. I mean, they call it God's gift. I even had an argument with the prime minister there, and I said, "What do you mean is God's gift?" I said, "In Leviticus, if you want to go to the Bible, it says you can't eat whale meat. It's strictly forbidden." He said, "Well, God made an exception." I said, "You know, I've heard a lot of crap in my life, but God didn't come to the Faroe Islands and say, 'Oh, you guys have. Well, I'll make an exception. You can eat whale meat. Nobody else can, but you can.'" I mean, people just fit this stuff into you know, to justify anything they want to do, and it's really unjustifiable.
Yeah. I'm so glad the work you have done and reached out to so many, you know, what they're doing is definitely evil. And I hope that we can, as we move forward, not consider anybody, animal or human, to be an evil thing, but that what they're
I don't
doing
know.
is evil.
I think that a lot of human beings are pretty evil. I mean, I think to the animal world, every
I
human being.
disagree. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you
Well, thank
can't,
you for your work.
but
Yeah.
you can't judge people. The problem is we don't judge people individually because we can't. We have to answer as a species what we're doing as a species, and what we're doing
Yes.
as,
And what
as
we're
a
doing
species,
is evil. Yeah.
there it's
We are not evil, but what we're doing is evil. Thank
well,
you so much.
but it's incredibly destructive. But here's the thing: about 10,000 years ago, there was a shift in the paradigm, our perspective of how we view the world. And that came around with the development of agriculture. Prior to that, we had a biocentric point of view. We looked at everything the way a lot of indigenous people do today, which is we're part of everything and we have to live in harmony with all other species. But we developed this anthropocentric attitude, which is it's all about us. It was all created for us. We're the only species that's important. We're dominant over everything else. And that is an evil philosophy because it alienates us from the entire natural world. And it's arrogant and it's ignorant. And we cannot survive on this planet unless we live in harmony with all other species, and not just animals, but plants too. And I mean, if phytoplankton disappears from the sea, we all die. We don't live in a world without insects and bees or worms or even microbes. They go, we die. But most people really don't understand that connection. We're not here. We're not islands unto ourselves. We're connected with everything else. I was
So
in
true.
I was in the University of Texas one time, and a student said, "Well, we know we don't need other animals. We don't need anything because we have technology and we're independent." And I said to him, I said, "Well, I'm looking at you. Do I see an individual?" And he says, "Of course, I'm an individual." I said, "No, you're not. You're a symbiont community. There's 1,700 species of microbes and viruses that live in your body, composing about 25% of your body weight. And if without them, you couldn't digest your food, you couldn't produce vitamins. You're a symbiont community. You're part of that community. And so we cannot live apart from them. We need them. And they don't need us in many cases, but we need them."
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Donna. I see Allison has her hand up. Come on up, Allison.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, I am totally ignorant about family life in the world of whales. Do they have something, would you consider something likened to what we would consider family life for whales? What's the role of the male, the female? How long does it last? Do they continue to live in the same pod? What is family life among whales?
Well, it's incredibly diverse. It depends on the species. Some whales mate for life. Some whales are matriarchal communities, like orcas, for instance. It's always a matriarchal leader there, and male whale orcas will be pushed out at a certain age and go out and on their own and try and establish a family. Uh, Sperm whales, usually it's a large, it's a very complex thing with sperm whales. It is matriarchal, but it's actually also a large bull that is, they're in a protective capacity, but not in a leadership capacity. So it's usually the large matriarchal leader that's making the decisions and everything, but the bull's there to protect. So every species is completely different on that, almost like human societies in many ways. So, but there is a bond. They are very social creatures, highly intelligent social creatures, and all very self-aware sentient beings. And they're very loyal to each other. If one's in trouble, the others will come to protect them.
And so there is no defined length of time that a whale baby or calf will stay with the mother cow. Maybe it depends on the species or that kind of thing.
With orcas, it's almost a lifetime.
Oh, really? Okay.
The calves will stay with the mothers for the lifetime. The But usually it's quite a few years. It's very slow reproduction because the gestation period can be a long time, and then the calf has to be cared for by its mother. It's fed milk just like any other mammal. That could be a couple of years. So it's not a very fast reproducing sort of society, and that's why whaling had such a diminishing impact upon the entire whale population. So it was very hard to keep up with the depredation by the whaling communities.
Mm, mm. So a mother cow will only have one calf every 2 years?
Yeah, probably every 5, 6. Again, it depends on the species, but
Yeah.
it's a long period of time, and certainly they don't have twins. It's hard enough taking care of just one of them. They're also born tail first because and the reason they're born tail first is because as soon as they're born, then they immediately go to the surface to breathe. But of course, if they were born head first, they could actually drown in the process because the body would be the head of the body would be outside into the water environment. So they have to very quickly get to the surface in order to breathe. And so that's pretty much common. I've never heard of a whale being born head first.
Mm, fascinating. Mm, wow.
Oh,
Well,
and also the other thing to add to it is that other females will assist females on the birth sometimes. Sometimes the males will assist on the birth.
mm, mm, amazing. I didn't realize that the gestation period is how long? For,
It's different on every species.
yeah.
I think the blue whale, you're probably talking about 14 months or something. It's a long time. You got to
Mhm.
remember that the size of a baby blue whale when it's born is about the size of a small, like a 2-year-old elephant.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
And it's also it's the fastest growing mammal in the world on that. And every day a baby blue whale probably drinks about 100 gallons of milk.
Wow.
Wow.
And they can't, and here's the other thing, they can't suckle. The mother actually shoots it almost like a jet stream into the
Because she's in motion. Is that why?
Oh, not necessarily, but that's, it's pretty hard to suckle in the water.
Mm. Mm.
It's an
Amazing.
amazing it's amazing biology. It's taken away, it's 45 million years of evolution to bring about the whales. In fact, they're far, far older as species than we are. Uh, and they also, one of the things that people don't appreciate about them much is that they have the largest brains of any animals on the planet. And it's not necessarily brain to body size. If we measured intelligence by brain to body size, hummingbirds would be more intelligent than we are. But the fact is that not only are they the largest brains, they're the most complex brains. So the human brain is about 1,700 cubic centimeters. The orca is a 6,000 cubic centimeter brain, and the sperm whale, the largest brain on the planet, is 9,000 cubic centimeter brain. But the convolutions on the neocortex area of the area are much more pronounced than on humans. And where most mammals have three-lobe brains, the whales have four-lobe brains, and that fourth lobe is almost associative behavior, which means that their communication abilities are far, far greater than ours.
Mm.
That's,
But
We often
then
talk about.
I just should add one more thing. The problem is that we equate intelligence with tools. It's eye to hand coordination. That's how we equate intelligence. But intelligence is defined in many ways. I was debating a whaler in Norway, and he said, "Well, Watson, you say whales are more intelligent than people. It's a very, very stupid thing to say. How could you be so stupid?" And I said, "Well, look, George, I measure intelligence by the ability of to live in harmony with the natural world, and by that criteria, whales are far more intelligent than we are." And he said, "Yeah, well, by that criteria, cockroaches are more intelligent than we are." I said, "George, you're beginning to understand what I'm trying to tell you. They've been around for 400 million years. They're doing just fine."
Oh, brilliant. So we often talk about how inappropriate bovine cow's milk is for human beings. And the milk of a whale would be totally inappropriate for human beings by that same standard, because the calf grows exponentially compared to a human baby based
Oh,
on the consumption of the milk that's specialized for that species.
yeah, the fat content on whale and seal milk is extremely high.
Mm, mm, amazing.
That's one of the problems with rescuing baby seals, for example. You can't give them cow's milk. You have to, because they'll actually starve if you give them cow's milk.
Oh, oh, fascinating. Thank you, Paul.
thank you, Paul. And part of this campaign that the grandmothers are bringing forth for International Calf and Cow Mother's Day 2026 is to make that point that the milk for each species is individual for that species and that species alone, and to sever that bond, that natural bond that we find so precious for the human. It's one of my greatest memories is allowing my babies to suckle. That we don't have the right to do that with any animal. So Paul, go ahead. You want to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, Paul. Thanks for coming. One of the things, obviously, we're trying to do with International Calf and Cow Day is to use the depth of the maternal bond that we feel as humans to create a kind of emotional opening into compassion for calves and cows on the land, calves and cows in the sea. And I think as humans, we were able to identify with that bond, especially in mammalian form. We seem to really be able to identify quite easily, if we can get past certain prejudices, with the special relationship that exists between a cow and her calf, a whale and her calf. But beyond that, and here comes my question, I feel very strongly on an intuitive level that there are very strong maternal bonds beyond the mammalian world. And so my question is, have you observed any non-mammalian sea creatures exhibiting that kind of maternal care and love for their young.
Well, we certainly see it in birds, and I've seen it in turtles and alligators. You know, you can
Oh,
see the babies riding on the back of the alligators sometimes. You see it in insects also. There's a bond. They care for their young. You know, they provide protection for their young. You'll see like spiders, for example, will have about 200 baby spiders on, and they're just walking around on the back of their mother, you know, because that's the safest place to be. So no, I think this is a universal sort of thing. This connection between you know, mothers and their offspring. I think it's very universal. There are exceptions, of course. You know, female grizzly bears have to sometimes defend their cubs from males who tend to want to eat them. But you know, those are just sort of bizarre, bizarre sort of situations there. And I think a lot of that depends upon environmental factors and that. But generally, I think mothers of all species are very protective and show a lot of maternal instincts. One of the things I want to mention about milk is that it's not a universal thing for humans to drink milk. In fact, it's almost purely Middle Eastern European thing. Africans and Asians tend to be lactose intolerant because they don't have the tradition of cheese and dairy products and things like this, which developed first in Mesopotamia and then in Europe, starting about 8,000 years ago. So Europeans and people from the Middle East have developed that an enzyme within their bodies to absorb and be able to digest milk. But that took about 8,000 years to do. So that's why you'll never get a glass of milk in a Chinese restaurant, so it's just discouraged. And in fact, there's a lot of intolerance to that.
yeah, I guess my part of my point is that I think there's value in really stressing that that maternal care across all species, because we tend to think of mammals rather as particularly caring towards their young. But as you said, it's virtually universal, and so it's easy to see fish, for instance, as opposed to sea mammals. It's easy to see fish as somehow virtually insensate. I think a lot of people see them that way, and stressing the fact that they are actual caregivers, I think, can really help humans to feel compassion towards them, towards what they're enduring, just like land-based animals are, the systematic exploitation.
Yeah, many fish, for instance, a lot of fish species carry the newly hatched babies in their mouth, as a form of protection. They don't eat them; they just carry them around and then let them go out and eat, and then come back. Mahi is there's a fish that mates for life. And if one dies, the other will probably die thereafter. So if a fisherman pulls out a female, then the male will probably die later on. A lot of birds, like geese, for instance, also mate for life. Albatrosses mate for life. So but it differs right across because there's so much variety, so much diversity in species. But all of those maternal instincts can be found on pretty much every level of the animal world, certainly through birds and reptiles and mammals.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Deepak, would you like to come up and ask a question? I see he just went off the screen for a sec. Maybe. Oh, there we are. Hi.
Hey, hey, Paul. Hey, everyone.
Mhm.
So I just know that I've always heard this, right? That dolphins are called the fourth ape, I believe, because of a lot of their social structures and maybe even empathy. Like we have all heard stories of dolphins saving humans from shark attacks.
Oh, I think I cut off. Oh, he's still connected?
Yeah.
They go off internet.
Oh,
There you
Yeah.
go.
You got cut off a little
Did
bit.
I cut off?
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, I
Did you
didn't hear if it had an ending or.
So you're talking about the compassion of dolphins, that we hear many stories about dolphins being very connected to the empathy of even other beings like humans. Did you want to just share on that while we're waiting for Deepak to come back, Paul?
Well, yeah, a lot of times dolphins will rescue people who are drowning because dolphins can see right through you. They can see if water's in your lungs or not. You can see if they're in trouble because of they see with their ears because through sonar. So that's why if people are drowning, sometimes are rescued by dolphins because the dolphin can see that they're in trouble. And dolphins, of course, are ready, it's part of their social pattern to rescue other dolphins that are in distress too. So I think that dolphins, certainly orcas, are aware of people and probably trying to understand what we are. One of I think the reasons to believe that they're certainly aware of us is that the orca is the most powerful predator on the planet, but it's never attacked a human being in the wild. It's never happened. People can swim with them; they don't get attacked. So the orca knows that we're different. We're something about us. I think that they probably think that we're dangerous and want to live in, peaceful coexistence. Really, is the way I look at it. But I've been in the water with orcas. I've grabbed the dorsal fin of an orca. This is way back in the '70s, and was pulled through the water by a wild orca. I mean, you don't go up to a lion in the Serengeti and pet it on the head, but here's a even more powerful predator that'll let you just, ride alongside. Uh, the only time orcas have ever killed human beings is in marine aquariums, and to me, that the reason for that is because these orcas are pretty much driven crazy by their captivity. You walk through a maximum security prison and turn your back to the prisoners, because there's a lot of trauma going on there. In fact, Tilikum, the one whale, killed two people. And when you look at Tilikum's history, it's like analyzing a person who's had a really bad family background, was stolen from his family at just 2 years of age in Iceland, brought to British Columbia, put into a tank with orcas from British Columbia. And orcas have different languages. You don't put an orca from Iceland in with a West Coast orca because they can't communicate with each other. They're completely different dialects. And Dr. John Ford proved that conclusively when he was measuring dialects. So he can actually tell where an orca comes from by listening to its language. And that so because of our insensitivity, Tilikum was abused and beaten, and ended up being a psychotic whale, and that's the reason that Tilikum killed two people.
Oh, yeah, lots.
Well, I think one of the most unusual encounters was 1910. Captain Robert Scott had three of his men were walking across the ice when a pod of orcas came right up underneath them, broke the ice, and knocked them off their feet. But when they realized that they weren't penguins, they just swam away and left them. Didn't carry out the attack.
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Tammy.
Great. Do you want to ask those, Allison, please?
Okay, the first question is, what's the economic driver that sustains 4,000 huge ships fishing today? Is it the bycatch or is it subsidies?
Oh, you're talking about the industrial fishing?
Yeah, I think so. It says, what's
Yeah,
the economic driver that sustains 4,000 huge ships fishing today?
Well, that's very simple. There's no money to be made from fishing, absolutely none. The economic driver is $90 billion in subsidies from governments. The EU, the United States, all these there are huge subsidies to keep these industrialized fishing operations going in order to supply a market for fish. We in the older days, you went out in a small boat and they caught some fish and everything. And the cod fishery off in Newfoundland was, I guess, sustainable for 300 years with no effect because people are going out in very small boats. But now they're $100 million super trawlers and drag trawl nets that are scouring the bottom, drift nets and gill nets 100 kilometers long. highly mechanized industrial. And the reason for this is as the fish populations have been diminished, it takes more and more resources to extract those diminished number of fish. But still, you can see the difference. I don't eat fish, but I do go to the fish markets because I go to the fish markets in order to see what's there, and and I can see the prices keep rising because it's harder and harder to get in the even despite the subsidies. I was actually raised in a fishing village, so I can have a comparison from 50 years ago to now. Um, but to end fishing, I said at the COP21 conference in Paris in 2015, I said, if we're going to protect the ocean and also address climate change, we need to have at least a 75-year moratorium on all heavy gear industrialized fishing to allow the ocean to repair the damage that we've done to it. And the ocean will repair that damage, but we have to leave it alone. But right now, we're pulling fish out of the ocean faster than they can reproduce. There is not well, I should say there's one, but other than that one, there's not a single sustainable fishery anywhere in the world. And that one is the Alaska salmon, and that's because of the hatcheries and the fact that Alaska doesn't allow fish farms, which causes diminishment of wild fish populations. But other than that, there isn't a single sustainable fishery anywhere in the world, and it's incredibly destructive. Take a toothfish, for example. You never heard of them because they don't sell them as toothfish. They're called Chilean sea bass, very valuable fish. But the Chilean sea bass is caught in the very rough waters of the Southern Ocean. It's very hard to get to, and to get them, we pulled one net from one of the Chilean fishing boats. We pulled this net was 72 kilometers long and weighed 70 tons, one net from one ship. We confiscated that net. And every day there's about 60,000 miles of nets and long lines that are set in the ocean on that. And but so once they catch this toothfish, this large toothfish, the Chilean sea bass, then they freeze it and then they fly it around the world to Paris, to New York, to whatever. Like this is a very high carbon footprint on that. And and it's not from Chile, by the way. It's got nothing to do with Chile. It's just a marketing term. It's back in the 50s. They used to have this a crab called the spider crab. Nobody was going to eat it because it was a spider. So they just changed the name to Alaska king crab, and then they could sell it that way. They tried doing that things like with gooey duck clams and calling it the queen clam, but it just didn't pull over. But that's the kind of stuff they're trying to pull all the time. But there is no sustainable fishing anywhere. And fishing economies have collapsed and have been replaced by industrialized fishing economies. I always have a laugh when people say, "Oh, you're putting all these people out of jobs." No, the fishing industry is putting people out of jobs uh, because they use very few people working these boats now compared to what they used to do. The Norwegian dragger fleet went down the coast of India and put 1 million Indian fishermen out of work, took everything out of those waters, just scoured the thing, and all these people had nothing to do. The reason you have Somali pirates off of the coast of Somalia is that these are fishing communities that the European and Asian fishing trawler fleets came in and took everything out. And so they had to resort to piracy out of sheer starvation and that. No,
Yeah.
but the fishing industry would like everybody to think that we're trying to take the food out of the mouths of poor families in the Philippines or off the east coast of Africa or places like that. They're not the problem. The problem are these giant super trawlers. When we were intervening against the super trawlers in the English Channel, there were 5 or 6 of them operating that we were opposing, and they're pulling net in after net, and each net was the size of a school bus, packed with fish, very small fish. They don't eat this fish. No human being is going to eat any of this fish. It's all rendered into fish meal. And then that is used as a cheap source of protein for factory farm chickens and pigs and for domestic salmon. So 40% of all of the fish being taken out of the ocean is being fed to domestic animals for production. And now it's becoming even worse. And this is what we're going down to oppose at the end of the year is the krill fishery, where they just exceeded their quota and took 650,000 metric tons of krill out of the Southern Ocean. This is the primary food of the whales and the penguins and the seals. And that's 650,000 metric tons, an enormous amount. They got 3 ships that are operating all the time, pulling this in. And that's all going to factory farms and to salmon farms. It's just a cheap source of it. Nobody's going to eat it. There's a very small percentage goes into so-called krill oil health supplements or omega-3 supplement tablets, but that's a very small amount, and people shouldn't be using that either anyway. But so really, the fishing industry is out of control. There is nobody controlling it, nobody regulating it. They don't have to report to anybody. They transship their fish caught or transship to other fish. Might catch some fish in the middle of Atlantic, gets transshipped to another ship, ends up in China. Nobody knows. It's completely on that. And there's an excellent film that was made last year about the observers, how many observers have been murdered on these ships because the government sometimes mandates you have to have an observer on board. And if the observer tells the truth, then that observer is pretty much risking his life because you're standing in the way of the profits of the company. The movie's called Fatal Watch.
Wow.
Incredible. Well, our next question is by one of our colleagues, mine and Allison's colleague, and everyone that's on here, part of our community. Ray, would you come and ask the question directly? And maybe you could mention to Paul that you are running the International Vegan Film Festival that's happening in November in Toronto. So thanks, Ray.
I certainly don't think I'll be there. I'll be probably attending by video. I can't come to Canada.
Oh, that's a tragedy that we can't have you back.
I'm no longer on the full red notice. That's been dismissed. It was a great victory, but Japan can still request my extradition from a country. So I don't trust the US. I don't trust Canada. I'm okay in France. I'm okay in Brazil. I'm okay in Chile. It depends on the country.
Has our change in leadership affected that at all?
No. The Canadian government hates me for many reasons. My opposition to salmon farms, my opposition to the seal hunt, my criticism of the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, whether it be the Liberal government, the Conservative government, it's always the same. Canada still has subsidizes the seal hunt to the tune of $20 million a year. There's no money to be made from killing seals, but we're going to keep it going because it's a politically correct thing to do to keep the Newfoundland fishermen happy because they believe that the seals are eating all their fish when in fact it's just the opposite. If you want a healthy fish population, you need a healthy seal or whale population, but they don't understand the biology or the ecology of that. It's just very simple. They look at it in very simple terms. They would rather wipe out everything in the ocean to have more fish. But the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, I've always called them the Canadian Department of Fishy Businesses, really. And I've always publicly said that they're the most incompetent Canadian bureaucracy on the planet.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've seen you speak so many times, and every time there's always one thing after another. You have so much knowledge that just blows me away. You're the world's most interesting man. Forget that Dos Equis guy.
I don't know. I just been around a while. People sometimes say, well, how come you've been so successful? I don't know, 50 years doing the same thing. You tend to be good at it.
And you know what we want to hear and what we need to hear. And sometimes those don't match. Yeah. So I appreciate the work that you do and the slings and arrows you've taken for us and for the animals. My question was that I've heard that jellyfish are one of the few species that benefit from an acidifying ocean. Are whales affected by increasingly acidifying and warming oceans?
It certainly, it does have an impact upon the food that they eat, especially krill populations, because fish populations, krill populations are influenced by tidal effects and that. So it changes their migratory patterns. So we're now seeing whales in places that we would traditionally not see them. But we're actually seeing a lot of fish populations moving further north in areas where they were traditionally not there. Northern European waters, for example, have fish that up 20, 30 years ago were not found in those waters. So that's the impact of climate change, which is causing a warming of ocean currents at a very escalating level.
So I did a little bit of research on it, and it mentioned that krill plankton may be actually one of the other species that may benefit from the acidification of the oceans.
I'm not sure about zooplankton, but phytoplankton I don't think benefits it at all. Phytoplankton is probably the most important group of species of plants on the planet. If phytoplankton disappears from the ocean, we all die. We don't live on the planet without phytoplankton. And since 1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton populations. And the reason for that has been the diminishment of the nutrients that the phytoplankton require, primarily iron, magnesium, and nitrogen. And that comes primarily from the feces of whales, dolphins, seabirds, and sea turtles and that. So when you diminish those species, you diminish the nutrient supply to the phytoplankton. So you can look on whales really as the farmers of the ocean, and they're constantly fertilizing these vast crops of phytoplankton, which produce 70% of the oxygen in the air that we breathe.
It was zooplankton that I was referring to, so phytoplankton being distinct is a good thing to help us understand.
Yeah, zooplankton are the animal plankton, like the krill, and the phytoplankton are the plants.
Great. Thanks a lot for answering those questions and for everything you do.
Thank you.
There's a question
Tammy,
from
you're muted.
I was saying maybe Paul might have a short documentary he would like to submit to the International Vegan Film Festival if he can't be there in person. He could always Zoom you in and do Q&A, Paul.
Oh yeah, we can do that. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for the promotion, Tammy.
When is that? When is that?
It'll be November 1st and 2nd, World Vegan Day.
Oh, okay. Of course, November is also the climate change conference in Brazil.
right.
So we have some more questions, Paul, but you were saying that you were heading off somewhere to speak about, or is it to intervene on some of the destruction that they're doing around the krill?
Yeah, our big campaign for the next year is to go down. I want to send 2 ships to the Southern Ocean to confront the giant krill fishing boats. These are huge vessels. And we have to go down there and block them and harass them and stop them and direct international attention to the destruction that they're causing. So that's what I want to focus on. So it'll be returning to the Southern Ocean to do that. So that's our major campaign. But we're also doing other campaigns. I have my vessel, the Jean-Paul de Jory, is will be leaving next month to intervene against poachers off of French Guiana, and then going to the climate change conference in Brazil, and then going to the Southern Ocean. We have a team on Mayotte Island in the Indian Ocean that is going after turtle poachers, and we have to patrol the beaches to keep the poachers away from them. We have a campaign to try and establish a sanctuary for captive orcas because our efforts here in France resulted in the French government passing a law forbidding the exhibit of orcas or dolphins in marine aquariums. But the problem is now that we have to find what to do with them, and we blocked them from selling them to Japan. So we're looking at establishing a sanctuary, which is a large open area like a bay or something, where we can put them and take care of them until we can see if the possibility of putting them back into the ocean. It's difficult with a lot of these animals that they're born in captivity. You have to teach them how to even fish in order to survive, because they've never known anything in their life except for dead fish.
Where are you visioning this sanctuary?
We're looking at Greece and Italy right now.
Right. And some possibilities?
Yeah, we have possibilities now. In fact, we can do it. The only problem is our government permits from Greece and France. It's we've gone to the French government, the Greek government. Look, we have the place, we have the means, we have the people who can take care of them. All we need is the permits. We'll get back to you. That's pretty much where it is. But I was on television during the UN conference in Nice, on the United Nations Conference on the Environment, and I did 15 minutes with President Macron to about 4 million people, where he did say that he was going to do something about it. So we'll see.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sailesh. You said there's questions.
Yeah, Alison.
Oh, yeah. Paul, you said earlier that you go to the fish market to see what's being sold. And so I was thinking that, here in our area in Lima, Peru, we go to the local market, which is large. It has 900 stalls. And I always avoid the fish section. I never go to the fish section. I avoid the exits that go by the fish section. I go out a different exit. So if I were to go to the fish section, what should I be looking for? What would I be
Oh, you
interested in if I were you?
what species are there and look at, what the status of that species is, what they're selling for, because that's a good indication of how diminished they are. The higher the price, of course, the more diminished the population. So really looking at the species and what the prices are. That's what I go and look for. It's interesting. There's one fish market here in Paris that I went in. There's a Sea Shepherd flag in there, and I said, "Well, what's?" And it turns out he's a big supporter. And I said, okay. And he said, "Oh, would you like any?" I said, "No, I don't really." But I said, "Why are you supporting us?" He said, "Well, because what you're doing is right, and I try to make sure that everything I sell here is sustainable." And I'm trying to tell him, well, there's no such thing, but he's trying his best. But even now, I think, for instance, we stopped the dolphin kill off of the coast of France here this year, and for years, the fishermen have been very, very angry. But now, even some of the fishermen are saying, the numbers are really just falling and everything. We just really have to do something because even a lot of the fishermen are realizing that the destruction is out of control.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to ask the questions in the chat, Allison?
Okay, let's see, what other questions are there in the chat? What's your view on training and erasing as much as 4 billion hectares as a way catch as many fishes? And also, how do we combine ocean conservation efforts with that of a vegan world of personal and planetary responsibility?
What were you saying? Erasing what?
Erasing as much as 4 billion hectares every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, like my position on the fishing is we got to shut it down. It's a destructive industry. Um, One of the other things that a lot of people don't realize is that 2.8 million tons of fish every year goes into cat food. So, we're scouring the ocean just to feed cats. So, I mean, cats got to eat, but still, it's not a natural food of a cat. uh, Maybe mice and rats are, but certainly fish aren't. If a bluefin tuna or a yellowfin tuna ever met a cat, it would eat the cat. So it's hardly a natural prey. But something we don't really think about. And I get a lot of criticism when I point that out. So, well, what do you want to do? Kill all the cats? No, I don't want to kill all the cats. I just want them to stop killing fish to feed the cats and find another alternative.
The next question is, so what drives the subsidies?
What?
What drives the subsidies?
What drives the subsidies are politics primarily. Keeping all of the fishing communities happy, keeping the consumer base happy. People want fish, and the government's going to be there to subsidize to make sure that they get those fish. Um, it, it's an incredibly expensive endeavor. The $100 million super trawlers are very expensive to run. You have to catch an awful lot of fish just to pay the bank off for the investment in those ships and equipment, in nets and satellites and fish aggregating devices. The technology is just unbelievably expensive. That's why it has to be subsidized. That's why it has to be subsidized. Um, that's a problem. Uh, and there's a lot of corruption too. For instance, one of the biggest fishing countries in the world is Spain, and there's a state of Galicia, which we call it the Galician mafia, because they run most of the illegal fishing boats in the world, the big toothfish boats and things like that. And they just have the courts in their pockets. Because, for instance, when we grabbed a vessel that was blatantly illegal, we took it into Sao Tome. The crew got fined. The ship got fined, went back to Spanish courts and said, "Nah, it's outside of our jurisdiction." Even though it was a Spanish ship, they refused to uphold the judgment of the other courts, and they get away with whatever they want. I actually coined a word for it. I call it homopeshophobia, which is politicians' fear of fishermen. You know, fishermen usually get what they want. In Ecuador, we were there and they had exceeded their quota on sea cucumbers, and they rioted. And the government says, "No, you've taken all you can. You can't have any more." So they went on a riot. They kidnapped 3 of my crew. They kidnapped some park rangers. They threatened to kill some of the tortoises in the park. They burned one down to the ranger stations. And what did the government do? Gave them what they wanted. You know, so that happens all the time. The fishermen riot, they get what they want.
So Paul, I understand why politicians would be concerned about keeping the, this broad constituency of fishermen who make their livelihood fishing happy. I can understand that. But why do they feel the need to keep these giant, high-tech fishing trawler owners happy? Are they funding their political campaigns? I mean, what's happening? I mean, it seems like the only thing these giant corporations are making is subsidies. And so what is it, just a question of the subsidies going out and then coming back in to fund campaigns? What's driving that cycle?
Well, the profits for the companies are the subsidies.
Yeah, exactly. So you're saying that politicians are giving the subsidies are coming back to them in the form of political campaign contributions, or
they do don't have campaign contributions, but it's a question of keeping the economies solvent, the fishing industry healthy. Make sure that there's fish in the markets, there's fish in the restaurants, and so okay, we eliminate fishing. Who's going to be angry? Well, first of all, the fishermen are going to be angry. And now the consumers are going to be angry. How come I can't have my fish and chips? How come I can't have my oysters? How come I can't? I mean, this is humanity. We don't like it when people take things away from us.
Yeah.
I think we demonstrated that quite a bit. So, well, everybody will start crying and screaming, and oh my God, who are all these environmentalists, and now we can't eat any fish because of them. So that this is the driving force, for the politics is really as they say, the art of the possible. The politicians are not very courageous people. If they're not going to do anything that their voters are not going to support, and if they do, then they're not going to last long, unless they're, amazingly charismatic individuals who manage to be able to communicate properly. But I remember in Canada, Joe Clark, when he was prime minister, said that he was going to raise the price of gasoline to what it actually costs and stop the subsidies. 6 months later, he was no longer prime minister.
Well, it's nice to believe that politicians are still somewhat responsive to their constituency. Feels more and more these days like politicians are doing things that the public is completely against, and yet they're not in any way inhibited by that.
No, well, they're going to support the companies and the corporations, and that first and foremost. I mean, really, who runs the world? It's the oil companies and the resource extraction industries. That's who runs the world. What they want, they usually get. Fortunately, I mean, we are fighting it now. I mean, in the United States, Trump just lifted the protections on the sanctuary of the Pacific near the Hawaiian Islands. And fortunately, the courts shut him down. So it's going to be an ongoing struggle for the next few years because he's trying to remove marine sanctuaries off the coast of Maine and everywhere else. And he'll do it, and we'll have to fight it in court. And it's a long process.
Mm. I would just ask some closing questions unless someone else has a question. Sailesh, did you want to add anything? Do you have a question, Sailesh?
No. I think we've asked all the questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Paul. It's
Great.
been really informative.
It's been beautiful. Yeah. And, Sailesh and many other activists talk about courage and sacred activism. So thank you for being that for us. And like Ray said, doing the work for all of us that you do, and everything that you're doing at this moment with your crew and your team and your community. So you've shown this radical love in action, and you call it aggressive nonviolence. So thank you for that.
Well, thank
And
you.
what would you say to the young people now rising to protect the bonds of all, all families? Because that's what we're seeing. Everything, Dr. Will Tuttle often makes that connection between what we were doing to animals, we're doing to each other as humans. And as we move towards a world that we can envision a protection of whales, other sea animals, and the calf and cow, or the bond of all species, what would you say we need to do to spiritually align ourselves so that we move into ecological repair, as you call it, your church of
Biocentrism. We have to take a
Mm.
biocentric point of view, which is to understand that we're part of everything and we're not dominant over everything, and that we need all of these other species in order to survive ourselves. This is a very complex interdependence of species within an ecosystem. And I've always said there's 3 laws of ecology, that if a species doesn't live in accordance to those laws, then they go extinct. And the first is the law of diversity, that the strength of an ecosystem is dependent upon diversity within it. And the second is the law of interdependence, that all species within an ecosystem are interdependent with each other. And the third is the law of finite resources, that there's a limit to growth because there's a limit to carrying capacity. And when one species like ours steals the carrying capacity of other species, that causes diminishment in diversity and interdependence, and that leads to ecological collapse. And we're seeing that happening more and more and more. So really the key is to adapt this biocentric point of view, and to learn to live in harmony with all the other species. I also tell young people that, you know, the strength of an ecosystem is in diversity. Therefore, the strength of any movement is in diversity. So you really have to pick, what are you good at? So, and what is your approach? It could be education, it can be litigation, it can be legislation, it can be activism. And then you just pursue that. We're using your skills and your abilities to the best that you can. So whether you're a teacher or lawyer or whatever you do it by trying to benefit to the planet as a whole. And one last thing I try to tell young people is not to get discouraged, not to get pessimistic, because nobody has any control over the future at all. But we do have absolute control over the present. So we should focus on what we can do in the present. That will define what the future will be. But there's no point in getting depressed and worried and pessimistic about the future. That's out of our hands. But the present, very much in our hands.
So would you say, Paul, that the answer to not falling into despair is continual creative action towards the good?
Absolutely. Just to focus on what can I do here, now, in the present? How can I make a difference? And will I make a difference? Don't worry about that. Just focus on what you can do. Because I've always said that the answer to an impossible problem is to find the impossible solution. And that impossible solutions comes through courage, imagination, and passion. And the example I always use is that in 1972, the very idea that Nelson Mandela would become president of South Africa was impossible. It was unthinkable. And yet that impossibility became real, it became possible.
Thank you so much for being here, Paul. And thank you for being our spokesperson for the Calf and Cow of the Ocean as we move towards International Calf and Cow Mother's Day 2026.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
There are only 6 types of people who make the modern world.
I don't want to happen there.
Right.
I
Talk
think
to
you
you soon.
you have to shut it down. I can
Yes.
shut-
Yes. Okay. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
See you again soon, Paul.